What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking our top 12 quarterbacks for the 2021 fantasy football season. And yes, it's still early, so these rankings are subject to change once we get closer to August to September. But as things stand right now, we'll go through these guys, the tiers they fit in, the expectations, where you should draft them, etc., etc. And if you enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe. Let us hear it in the comment section whether you agree, disagree, if names were too high, too low, or just excluded in general. And if you want a deeper dive into these rankings and others, do yourself a favor, get a copy of the 2021 ADP Fantasy Football Draft Guide now available for purchase on alldaypigskin.com. Top 150 overall player ranking, standard and PPR, individual player bios, projections, and general fantasy football advice, details in the description. But with that being said, let's get into this list. And as you can see, we have got our rankings here pulled up, imported. And to nobody's surprise, the first name on the list under Tier 1, Patrick Mahomes of the Kansas City Chiefs. And I mean, look, this isn't a shocker. What else can you say about Mahomes? He's young. He's in his prime. He's on an offense with Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, an improved Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and an Andy Reid that tailors things perfectly for him. The offensive line, again, better than it was last season. And the team scores seemingly like 30-plus points per game. That's what you want for your QB1. He's got a very high floor. And probably if you had to pick a quarterback to be one of the favorites for leading the league in passing yards, passing touchdowns, Patrick Mahomes would be at the top of the list. So you see why he's probably the most popular name in terms of quarterbacks in fantasy football right now. The thing is, he's going to cost you a lot, average draft position-wise. The guy's probably going the middle to the end of the second round, maybe early third round. But the problem is, you're also going to be passing up on a lot of great running backs, wide receivers at that point in time. So this just comes back to, what we oftentimes say. Ideally for quarterbacks, you want to invest in a guy that's coming off a down year, but still has the upside, or someone that hasn't necessarily broken out yet that you could get for cheaper. And when we're going through this list, there's going to be a couple guys that fell into that category last season that we can highlight. But either way, right now, Mahomes, probably the safest tier 1 quarterback of the bunch, but also the most expensive. Moving on to number 2, we have got Kyler Murray of the Arizona Cardinals. And with Murray, we like to think of him as the most balanced dual threat quarterback. It's, probably a competition between him and then Lamar Jackson, but Murray gets the edge because of his passing upside. He's still probably going to rush for between 600 to 750 yards on the ground, which is extremely valuable. But he also has DeAndre Hopkins, Christian Kirk, AJ Green. So also some help through the NFL draft. So that's big time. That's important. The defense also not as stout. So that the Arizona Cardinals are going to have to air it out, going to have to put up a bunch of points. And Kyler Murray, again, that means he has a very high floor. Through a certain point last season, in 2020, Kyler Murray was the number 1 scoring quarterback in fantasy. Then kind of went, a little bit cold, but still, he was a very viable option, top 5 guy, and we anticipate that'll be the case yet again. We think he takes another step forward this season, so we really like him as our number 2 quarterback on this list. And right now, he's probably actually getting drafted maybe as the 3rd overall quarterback, potentially behind Josh Allen. And if that's the case, if he's still there, in the 4th, 5th round especially, that would be, in our opinion, a steal for Kyler Murray. So we really like the value and the upside for him there. Moving on, we have the aforementioned Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills at number 3, who had that breakout season in 2020, was an MVP candidate. And the thing with Allen is he's that prime example of a quarterback that you get in the double-digit rounds that has the upside, and then you don't pay up a lot for it, and then ends up actually being the top overall scoring quarterback for the 2020 season. So now, however, due to recency bias and just because of last year's performance, Josh Allen is going to cost you an arm and a leg, probably the 2nd quarterback off the board after Patrick Mahomes. But look, the good news is the offense hasn't changed too much. You've still got Stephon Diggs, Beasley, you've added Emmanuel Sanders, still got Gabriel Davis there, and Josh Allen does have upside in terms of rushing touchdowns, rushing yards. Not as much as Kyler Murray or Lamar Jackson. That's why he's not the number 2 guy here, but probably around 400, 450 yards. And since the Bills don't have an established rushing attack, really, Josh Allen is going to get used in the red zone. So that's always nice to see. He's usually top 5 in terms of rushing touchdowns for quarterbacks the last couple of seasons. So again, very valuable from that perspective. Then moving on to Lamar Jackson at number 4. He's still in the tier 1 category, and in fact, he is our favorite tier 1 quarterback right now, probably the best value out of all these guys. We've seen him last probably until like the 5th, 6th round, which is absolutely insane value for a tier 1 type of quarterback. But again, this is where recency bias comes into play because last year he struggled. And we said, don't go into 2020 expecting MVP type of Lamar Jackson performance. And the Baltimore offense took a step back passing-wise, but to his credit, Lamar Jackson, man, he still had over 1,000 yards rushing on the ground. He's the best rusher on his own team, despite how many running backs they have there, and that's why he's so valuable. Now, the thing that we like for Lamar Jackson is that he'll probably, again, lead the league in terms of rushing yards for quarterbacks, but the Ravens did a good job of adding weapons in terms of wide receivers, Sammy Watkins, Rashad Bateman, Wallace. So that's going to be probably the best receiving core that Lamar Jackson has ever had around him. And if those passing yards kind of, eclipse that 4,000 yard mark and even higher, then Lamar Jackson more than likely is going to be the top overall scoring quarterback in 2021. We love the upside. And again, due to the rushing ability, we think he also has a very high floor. So out of all these guys, he'd be the one that we are targeting because of value. But now transitioning to our tier 2 list, we start with Dak Prescott, who, look, unfortunately, he got hurt last season early on, but he was on an absolutely insane pace. Like, he would have had over 6,000 yards passing. Now, obviously, that probably wouldn't have continued as the season went on, but the Dallas offense is absolutely loaded. Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, that's a hell of a trio. You've got tight end options as well. And, oh yeah, Ezekiel Elliott, who's a great rusher and also a great pass catcher at the running back position. The offensive line, not quite as good as it's been a couple years ago, but it's still, above average. I would say one of the better offensive lines in the NFL. Dak Prescott expected to come back from injury. And, we think he can put up similar numbers to what he did probably in 2019 when he first kind of had his big breakout year. And he was good enough for a top 5 quarterback finish then. We think he can do it again in 2021. But again, just not quite as high on our list in terms of being in that tier 1 category. We like him, just think he will be a little bit less consistent than the other guys. Doesn't necessarily have the rushing upside as a Murray or a Lamar Jackson. But, on the flip side, probably him, Patrick Mahomes, will be one of the favorites to lead the league in passing yards. We just need to see it more consistently from Dak Prescott and also factor in that he's coming back from a major injury. But nonetheless, he still comes in at number 5. Then coming in at number 6, we have got Justin Herbert, a sophomore quarterback that we're pretty high on. And Herbert for the Chargers last year, he did an excellent job kind of thrown into the fire without a lot of warning. And he set several rookie quarterback records. He's got a great offense there for the Chargers. Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, you added Jared Cook to replace Hunter Henry, Mike Williams. But the thing we're the most excited for when it comes to Justin Herbert is that improved offensive line. No joke, the Chargers had one of the best free agencies drafts when it comes to improving the offensive line, getting tackle help, getting center help, and that's going to go a long way in protecting your franchise quarterback. That should be the game plan everybody follows. This is an offense that scores a lot of points. We're excited for Justin Herbert. We love the weapons that he has. Again, doesn't quite have the rushing upside, but when you look at these tier 2 group of quarterbacks, none of them are really known as rushing quarterbacks that are going to get you like 500, 600 yards rushing necessarily. So we're looking more so here at passing upside, and we really like that for Justin Herbert, who value-wise right now, he's probably going maybe as the 8th, 9th overall quarterback. So there is value there. We're a little bit higher on him than most. But again, just looking at the upside and considering that you can still get good value on him after the 6th round, we really like Herbert as a potential guy for 2021. Moving on to number 7, we've got Russell Wilson of the Seattle Seahawks, who's probably, if it's not him, it's Dak Prescott as the 5th overall quarterback off the board. Russell Wilson, usually probably the 6th guy, somewhere around that range. And the thing with Russell Wilson is when the Seattle Seahawks allow him to air it out, he is absolutely sensational. He is a league winner. He is an MVP candidate. And he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL and fantasy football. We saw that last season. But the problem with the Seattle Seahawks and with Russell Wilson is they go on these hot and cold streaks. They won't let, as we say, Russell Wilson cook for the entirety of the season, even though the weapons are there. Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, who had that big breakout season last year, only going to get better. You've got Chris Carson, Russell Wilson. Out of all these guys, he's got the best legs. So even though it's not as much as Murray and Lamar Jackson, he's got better rushing upside than all these other tier 2 quarterbacks. The problem is you're going to get inconsistencies. We haven't seen anything from the Seattle Seahawks that would indicate that they're going to change the way they do things in terms of their scheming, their game plan. And that means, again, hot and cold streaks for this offense, for Russell Wilson. So even though we recognize that Russell Wilson at a certain point in time, maybe during the first quarter or half of the season, he could be the number 1 scoring quarterback in fantasy football. It probably won't end that way. That's why we have a little bit concern with him. But other than that, we really like him. And if the Seattle Seahawks allow him to be the quarterback that we've seen him be during those hot stretches, the guy is 1000% belongs in the tier 1 category, which makes sense why people like the upside, why he could be the 5th overall quarterback, the 6th overall quarterback. But again, here we're looking at consistency at this point, and that's why we just dock him a little bit. But either way, still a tier 2, 7th overall quarterback in 2021. And then finally, 8th overall, we have got Aaron Rodgers of the Green Bay Packers. And we're not worried about all these rumors with Aaron Rodgers getting traded. We don't think it's going to happen. And when Aaron Rodgers is healthy, you saw it last season, he won the MVP for God's sakes. He's got Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones, Robert Tonyan kind of coming into his own as well. And even though the Packers refuse to add talent around him at the wide receiver position, Rodgers still gets it done. When healthy, the guy is a reliable quarterback. He makes very little mistakes. He's good for over 4,000 yards. He is sensational, and he puts up points. So that's what you want from Aaron Rodgers, from your quarterback, whoever it is, as long as he can, stay healthy, since he's the oldest quarterback in this tier list, and he's had some injury issues before. Aaron Rodgers is a solid quarterback, probably, low to mid-level QB1 in that category. But either way, he right now is probably, again, getting drafted right around that Dak Russell Wilson range because of his great performance last season, the MVP win. So again, there's some recency bias there. So probably the price right now for him a little bit overvalued, but either way, he does belong in the tier 2 category. Now, making our way into our last couple of names, tier 3, we start with Jalen Hurts, and this one is all about upside. If you're drafting Jalen Hurts because of his arm, you're doing it wrong. It's all about rushing upside here. You're projecting something, close to Lamar Jackson-esque level, between 800 and 1,000 yards rushing. If Hurts doesn't have the rushing upside, if he's just a passing quarterback, the guy probably doesn't crack the top 20 list of quarterbacks. But because of what he can do with his legs and how valuable that is in fantasy football, then you take a chance on Jalen Hurts. We kind of equate this to when Lamar Jackson broke out a couple of years ago, and you were kind of drafting him as a potentially backup quarterback, as someone that you take a shot on, and then you get another guy as a safer option. That's the way you should approach Jalen Hurts. He's usually going to go maybe as the 10th, 11th quarterback off the board, but we do anticipate that with Jalen Hurts, his average draft position, his ADP will continue to steadily rise come September, August, so maybe more so than any other quarterback on this list. So be prepared once, a couple months from now hit, that you're going to have to pay more so for him than you do right now. So maybe if you have a chance to draft him now is the better time to do so. We're not expecting anything earth-shattering from him passing-wise, but the rushing upside is there. That's why you draft him. Just make sure, play it safe, get a solid backup as well when you get Hurts in case he does struggle, because even though he might have one of the highest upsides, highest ceilings, he also has a very low floor. Moving on to number 10, we have got Matthew Stafford. And with Stafford, he is on a new team with the LA Rams. But you could argue that this is the best offense that he has ever had, even including the Megatron days, which is absolutely incredible. The Rams, offensively, they're spoiled. Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, Cam Akers coming into his own. The offensive line kind of figured it out last season. The defense is incredible. But with Matthew Stafford, we still expect some ups and downs. What we would say here is imagine Tom Brady last season when he first joined the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Even though Matthew Stafford, obviously younger, passing-wise, he still has it, very strong arm. He's had over 5,000 yards passing before in his career. So we are a little bit higher on him than we were Tom Brady last season. But just as a reminder, Brady last year, even though he did have some very big games, he also had some duds, sometimes where he had struggled to get more than 15 fantasy points. And when he doesn't need to, he's not going to air out the ball a bunch. And that's kind of what we say for Matthew Stafford, because the Rams are going to have so many different ways to beat you that it won't always have to be on the arm of Matthew Stafford like it was when he was in Detroit. So that's just something that we point out. But next up, we've got Tom Brady at number 11. And we kind of touched on Brady when talking Matthew Stafford, but Brady last season, he barely finishes as a top 10 quarterback. When you look at the whole story at the end of the year, the stats are pretty good. Going to get close to 4,500 passing yards. His offense is probably the most loaded in the NFL. Mike Evans, Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin, Rob Gronkowski, Leonard Fournette, Ronald Jones. I'm getting winded just talking about all those guys. The offensive line is good. The defense is great. He's going to have plenty of opportunities. But it's going to be inconsistent. And we think it'll be even more inconsistent this season because for the Bucs, they don't want to exhaust Tom Brady in the regular season. They want Tom Brady at his peak during the playoffs. So during the regular season, they might just ask Tom Brady to do the minimum, probably around 200, 250 passing yards per game. The interceptions, the touchdowns, not all that important in the grand scheme of things. But for fantasy football purposes, it might be a little bit frustrating. So, yes, Tom Brady will be a borderline top 10 fantasy quarterback. But if you're looking for more consistent options, we would look elsewhere. And then finally here, we end with Deshaun Watson of the Houston Texans, who has a huge asterisk next to his name because we honestly didn't know whether we should include him on this list at all. He obviously has off-the-field issues that haven't been resolved. He might not even play this season one snap. But if he does, you can't argue that Deshaun Watson is probably a tier 1 quarterback or right there on the tier 2 list. And right now, since we don't know one way or the other, we have to project like he is going to play. The reason why he's so low is because of the inherent risk that he has. None of the quarterbacks we've mentioned so far have off-the-field issues like Deshaun Watson does. We don't even know if he does play, whether it's going to be on the Houston Texans. So you see our hesitation with him there. Also, the Texans, the offensive line, absolutely horrendous. Will Fuller just left. Other than Brendan Cooks, who do you have? So the defense also awful. It just play calling bad. But Deshaun Watson is so good on his own, rushing-wise, just airing out the football, that he makes up for that. And he's going to be a borderline top 5 fantasy quarterback if he plays the entire season. But again, that is the big key here. If he plays the entire season, that's why, right now you're going to see a lot of platforms having him in the 20s, which I completely understand. Some might not even rank him, which is probably, again, a smart thing to do as well. But we have to mention him here for the sake of he could be a steal. He could be a value piece. If he does play, then he's going to be the biggest steal at the quarterback position because nobody's drafting him like a QB1. They're drafting him as a backup. They're letting him go undrafted. So just something to keep in mind with Deshaun Watson there. So with that, we wrap up our 2021 rankings for the quarterback position, looking at our top 12 guys. Let us know what you thought in the comment section. Did you agree, disagree, along with any other questions? If you enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe, and also get yourself a copy of the 2021 ADP Fantasy Football Draft Guide. Like we mentioned, all the details in the description. Give us a follow on All Day Pigskin on Twitter to continue interacting with us there. But in the meantime, we'll see you guys in future videos.